Bridge City Radio.
Yes, yes, yes. You are tuned in to Bridge City Radio on 100.7 LPFM KCLA. Out of the beautiful city of San Pedro, I am your host, Victor Bustillos.
Welcome back, Bridge City Worldwide. My name is Frank, and we're glad you're tuned in with us tonight.
That's right. Here tonight, we have a special guest. This is somebody who I've been dying to have on the show. She has a wonderful collection, heavy hitting tunes, definitely can contend with the rest. Someone who I look up to, who I've barely found out about this person. Big shout out to Arlene 5150. Solera 5150. Arlene, thank you for introducing us to, all the way from Melbourne, Australia, Miss Samantha Goldie. Samantha, how you doing today?
Hey, hello, Frank, Victor, how you doing? I'm good.
We're doing great. Glad to have you with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, so glad to have you, and excited to find out more about you and learn about you. We don't get to know so much about other fellow collectors from across the world other than what's on social media.
Right.
So it's great that we have this opportunity to reach out and try to do interviews and listen to other people's collections via the new technology platforms that we have at our hands. Excited to have you here, Samantha.
Oh, look, Facebook drives you crazy, but the introduction of it really opened up collectors from all over the world getting to know each other, which was really fantastic. It's how I first met Ruben and Solera and George, the Southern Soul Spinners. It's fantastic.
Yes. Oh my gosh, so monolithic, where they play a big role in so many of us, including myself. We can get into all of this as I only knew of Rare Soul through my cousin who collected these compilations, and once the Southern Soul Spinners came out, it was like it skyrocket through the whole scene, where people just really wanted to find out about this obscure music. But I want to get into your life, and I want to know about you and how you got into it. I know you've been doing this a long time. So how do you feel? You ready to get into this?
I sure am. Let's go.
Frank, what about you?
Yeah, let's get right into it.
All right. So without further ado, Bridge City Radio brings to you the interview with Samantha Goldie out of Melbourne, Australia. So Goldie, one of the key questions that I like to ask everyone is, where were you born?
I was born in London, in the UK, to an Irish Australian mother and an Italian father. But I was raised until I was 7 by my mother as a single parent.
Wow.
So was that in London till you were 7 you were raised?
No, we moved back to Australia when I was really young. I don't know, 2, 3.
Oh, wow. So as far back as you can remember, what type of music was typically listened to in your home?
Well, my mum remarried my sister's father, which is where I get the name Goldie. And my mum was one of the original Cougars, and she married a toy boy.
Oh, nice.
That's I shouldn't say that, actually. They're still together, and he's amazing. But
Wow.
he was younger than her. So the stuff that was being listened to, I was born in 1965. He was into sort of the Doors and Rolling Stones and Cream and
Oh, yes.
Good
all
stuff.
of that kind of stuff. That was
great
his
music.
jam. So that's what was played at home, in the family home.
You
when I was
mentioned
growing
Toy
up.
Boy. What's Toy Boy? What is that? I mean, I don't really know if that's a group or a quote
No,
or
meaning that my stepdad's 14 years younger than my mum. So,
Okay.
it's
Okay,
just a
okay.
running joke.
That's so
They've
funny.
been together for 48 years. He's
That's
an amazing
awesome.
man.
That's good. That's good to hear. Okay.
That's so funny. So Goldie, so when you remember listening to this music, did you have a liking to it as well? Was this something that you enjoyed as a child, or
Yeah.
was there another type of music?
Well,
did.
I liked it when they played it, but it meant that come my formative years, when I was sort of 13 and first getting into music myself, thankfully punk rock happened.
Wow.
Because all the kids at school were all getting into what my mum and dad listened to. So that was no rebellion for me. So thankfully punk was there, and punk was my first serious love of music when I was 13 and when I first started buying records.
So,
Did you,
when
did you dress up in it? Go ahead, Frank.
No,
go
so
ahead.
when you say punk, what kind of groups would you say or songs were the ones that were pivotal in your life at that moment?
Oh gosh, now you're making me think. Bands like Gang of Four and of course the Sex Pistols and the Clash. It was all English punk because this was 1980. Oh, I did listen to the Dead Boys from New York and New York Dolls. All of my friends were a bit older than me. So I was 13, but I looked older so I could get into pubs. And I was so naughty.
I was just gonna ask, did you wear the attire? What was
I
your
had
attire
shaved
typically?
head, no eyebrows.
Wow.
I'd put a safety pin in my cheek,
Oh wow, okay.
to
I can
go
see your-
out.
I can see your records back there. Do you have any Sex Pistol 45s in there?
I don't. No. The thing about record collecting is, as you know, it's quite expensive, and past collections pay for the new collections.
Okay, right.
Because but a lot of my punk stuff, I wouldn't have called myself a serious collector with punk, because the boys just wouldn't let you. You're a girl, and they barged you out of the way at record stores. And it took a few years before I just went, hey, you know what? I want to buy records.
Yeah.
So, and I did, in fact, sort of in the early 90s, trade off a lot of stuff that I had no idea it was so rare, of like Australian punk stuff, Victims 45s, Slug, the Skunks, all these bands.
Never even heard of them. Yeah.
All of my musical cultures have always been about buying 45s.
Nice.
Punk was about 45 culture.
Around what age? Around what age was this? Around 13, you said?
13 was...
So you were already purchasing 45s around this age with like birthday money or stuff like that?
Yeah.
Wow. So I know that punk kind of goes hand in hand with ska. Were you into ska at the time as well?
No. Everyone does things a little differently in Australia because we're so far away. And to be honest, we were sort of, for the most part, middle-class kids. I mean, I came from a working class, lower middle class. My upbringing wasn't typical, with my dad being a lot younger than my mum. We didn't have sort of a pool and things like that, whereas a lot of people in our area did. So Australia kind of approached music differently. It was only with the introduction of English people into the scenes that things like ska came in to punk. but it was all the groups were together but separate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, of course. Around what age would you say was the transition between? Did you transition from punk to soul? And if so, around what age do you think that was?
I would say I didn't transition fully. I first sort of discovered soul through, things like the Supremes, and there's no soul culture here in Australia. It's all from outside. So it was, sorry?
No, go ahead.
So mainstream soul was what I first heard. But, I got into hip hop.
Wow.
And then funk, then soul proper. But deep soul, I've always loved. That was, in the mid 80s, turning over my Aretha Franklin 45 and hearing the flip of Chain of Fools, which is Prove It.
Wow.
It's a ballad. And that was like, oh, okay, that really resonates with me. And I got into hip-hop as it was happening in the late 80s, early 90s, and loved it. And then started collecting funk from listening to hip-hop.
Wow.
And then, of course, you turn over your funk 45s, and they've got crossover or sweet soul on them.
So when you say hip hop,
awesome.
what hip hop are you talking about when you say 80s hip hop?
Look, my favorite would be early 90s. Diggable Planets would be my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
But I was listening to, I don't know, Lords of the Underground, Chino XL.
Yes.
All of the stuff that I was just buying the records as they came out. Sort of in the
so
early
obviously
90s.
You see the samples in there, and you probably wanted to know what they were. Yeah.
The first Cypress Hill album.
So what do they call it? Do they call it
really
American rap, or I mean, it's kind of odd when I think about it, because all that's usually coming from New York or California. How do they address that type of music out there?
Well, there's always been a big hip hop scene here, and a lot of Australian hip hop bands, and it took a while for them to just say, okay, we don't need to put on a fake American accent. I mean, that said, one of the funniest things I've ever seen is Public Enemies in the 90s in Adelaide, which is where my parents grew up, playing to an all-white audience.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, I mean, this was the fight the power era.
Yeah.
Black pride revolution to a sea of white people. I think there was like one Aboriginal kid
So
that
cool.
it was kind of crazy because it's, we have a pretty racist past in Australia, and it's very, very white. And it was only in the 70s when more Asians came in, and then, of course, New Zealanders and Samoans and Maori, and in the last sort of decade, Somali. But every black friend I've ever had has just gone, where are all the other black people? They're not here. So
All right.
we're very white bread here.
Yeah.
Well, you guys obviously had great taste in music, as it sounds like. I mean, from hip hop to funk, to punk, it's amazing. I love music. I love that music touches my heart. No matter what the genre is, there's always a time for it in my life, for that specific song or that specific sound.
Absolutely.
So do you still, I know you have some LPs. I know we've talked and you've showed me some of your other shelves that are not in frame right now. Do you still have some of your hip hop LPs?
No. I do this thing where I purge. And when I moved to Melbourne, which was maybe 13 years ago, I just looked at my record collection and I went off. And I got rid of, I'd say 90% of my albums and 545s. Wow. And I regret getting rid of, most of it, because at that stage it's like, I'm never going to listen to this again. But I'd done this before, and I did it with punk, and I should have known, of course, at some stage you're going to want to listen to it again. Thankfully, my partner, Dave Boots, is also a collector, and he grew up, he was a graffiti writer and played in hip-hop bands as a turntablist. So he has lots of hip-hop. So if I'm feeling nostalgic,
good.
We pull stuff out.
Good. I don't ever want to hear of this happening, but if it ever does, keep my number in case you're purging on to the next collection.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So the transition into soul music now, we went from hip hop to funk, from funk to soul. By this time in your life, were you already thinking about playing music out to the masses? Did you have a DJ set or thinking about considering purchasing turntables?
Funnily enough, I've never personally owned decks at home. You can see in the background I've got a Technics SP10 Mark II as my home turntable. My partner has decks. I started DJing out in 1996 as a funk DJ, and that was from going to clubs and going, hold on, I've got better records. Why am I not playing records? But I always thought DJing was hard, and it is to be a proper turntablist, but with 45s you're just a selector. It's about, and if you know your records, you know the levels, so it's easy.
You do such a good job with it too, Samantha. I mean, I've when Boss Action comes on, it's pretty late out here, but I've sat and listened to it, and just your voice is refreshing. Listening to the music you play and the way that you play them, you're not consistent with just one thing. I have this problem where I love the heart ripping, gut wrenching, the belting vocals, the dreadful, mournful sound. My girl is always telling me, it's just so mournful, it's so sad, it's like a soap opera,
It's fantastic.
That's my soap opera, Flanny Flanders, I'm using that, brother. Flanny says he says, I tell my wife, it's like your soap operas, just think of it like that, but you're not like that. Like, you're kind of all over the board. Like, you will play a dagger, as we may call them, but then you're also, you kind of go into some crossover or something funky, and I love that about you. I love when you play.
The interesting thing is when I first got my radio show on PBS, I'd already been doing radio in Sydney.
Okay.
I started off going in with a group of girls called the Sydney Soul Sisters, and Maria O moved to the UK. She's married to Arthur Fenn, one of the big, really big crossover DJs, and his stuff just, schooled me. Alex White, who no longer plays out, still has an extensive collection. She moved to Melbourne. And then another girl, Linda. And I totally forgotten my point. So I joined, I joined their show, Sydney Soul Sisters in Sydney. And then when Maria went to England, Alex came to Melbourne. DJ Bernhard from Austria joined me, and we changed the name to Sounds of Soul, and he did the show with me. And then when I left, I came here, and he took over Sounds of Soul as his own show. And it took me about a year and a half before I got my own show. I was guesting on shows within 2 weeks of being here. But initially they wouldn't give me a soul show. And they said, you have to play funk. We've got too many soul shows. And I'd go, but I play crossover and rare soul and sweet soul and deep soul. They play, northern soul and R&B and youth club soul. But to a programming committee, they just heard soul. So initially, I had to play a funk show, and I would say, oh, okay, here's Ray Frazier's Loneliness. This is big on the funk scene in the UK, playing a crossover tune just to get around. So,
right.
They were like, I'm like, but I'm playing funk. And then, of course, I would say, but I want to end with some slowies. So
nice.
The way my show morphed is a lot of my listeners love funk. So the first half of my show is always more up-tempo than the second half. It's not necessary. Sometimes it's up-tempo. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just mid-tempo. But sort of the first half, I really try to have a little bit of beat to it, and I am my collection is beat challenged. Even though
you do really well, you do really well. I love it. I mean, I can't even lie, Samantha. You have so many titles that are well searched for here in the States, and I'm sure across the globe, and I don't know how many moto labels you have. I mean, I've seen at least 5 of them on your page.
I have all of the soul funk motos. I have all of them.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely wonderful.
So that's only 10, but there was about 26. But you see, I have a real love for Buffalo because in the mid-90s, I was at art school and I went to study for a year at Buffalo State University. Okay. And did a year of my university degree in arts in Buffalo. So that's one of the reasons that moto is a thing for me. Same with Ordell and collecting labels from Rochester and that sort of thing, because I lived there studying. So I have a sort of, it's a soft spot in my heart for it.
So did you start buying them when you were there, or this was after?
I would go looking. I didn't manage to find anything rare. I've got to say, this was 1993, and I was going off every weekend to see Fugazi and Diggable Planets and Tribe Called Quest, and I was not as heavily into soul. I was listening to funk more then. But I didn't find any super rare records there, even accidentally. I was buying records. So, but
I know we've talked, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
I know we've talked before, Samantha, and you had mentioned how a lot of your collection was obtained early on, because we were talking about how outrageous some of the prices are today. And I would like to know a little bit about that. So I know you have some stories. We actually spoke one time on, oh gosh, which record was it? And you were actually telling me the story. Actually,
is it
on the
Salt
mix
and
that
Pepper?
you did.
Which
Yes.
is, the story
Yes.
is in the
In the mix, yes.
in the mix. That's
Yeah,
an
Tell us a little bit
exceptional.
about some of the run-ins you've had with some of these artists and the records and the sweet stories that you have come across just gaining records.
I'm one of the things about being isolated in Australia is the only soul scene here for a long time was just the northern soul scene, and that was expats. Lots of expats that went to Wigan and the Twisted Wheel, a few who went to Stafford. So they were into more four on the floor soul. And I was on the early days, I was on the funk board when James Trouble used to run it before Fryer, who now has Athens of the North, has it. I was on Soul Source and Rare Soul forums. And because of listening to funk and flipping over the records, I got into sweet soul and a lot of that sort of rare soul, which is it's not quite funk, it's not quite soul. They couldn't, and it had no beat, so the English weren't interested in it. So you could pick it up cheaply. This is sort of the beginning of this century. So that was when there was sort of this period of about 6 or 7, 8 years where you could pick up all of that sweet soul. It was before the crazy prices in LA.
Yes.
And before there was a really big lowrider scene. And so I was just picking up everything I could that was, you'd buy the big record off your wants list, and then you just buy a whole bunch of those $20 and $30 records. And it's, I remember Little Janice on Pizzazz. Yes. But that was a $10 record.
Wow.
I had multiple copies of that. I gave them to my friends. Oh my God, you should hear this, have this. I would never make a good record dealer. I give records away. I went to Florida in 2003 and searched a warehouse. And, it was just banana boxes of unsleeved record 45s.
Wow.
In a tin shed. In fact, I was supposed to go to a night that Kebdaj and Mike Vey were playing in LA.
Yes.
After this, but because I'd spent 2 weeks in a hot shed in the middle of summer full of dirt, and you're wiping your face, I was covered in sweat pimples. I looked like I had the pox. Me and my friend, we ended up realizing we needed antibacterial wipes because the same thing happened to him. And I was like, okay, I've talked to Mike Vey on the phone heaps of times and bought records off him.
Yes,
and I'd met Keb and DJ'd before him in Australia a few times. So he was like, come to my gig, you're going to be in America. And I say, you're fantastic. And I remember standing and looking at myself in the mirror and going, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can't do it.
So I ended up not going, which was a real pity. I've always regretted it, but, sometimes...
I've never had the opportunity to meet Keb, but Mike Vegg's a good guy. And
he's lovely.
Yeah. So the salt and pepper story. I know you described a little bit on that, and I wanted you to talk about that a little bit.
That was a really beautiful and a really strange one. I was drunk one night, drinking single malts alone, listening to YouTube, and I posted Man of My Word up on Facebook. Yes. And I normally, as I said, I don't post records I don't own. I don't talk about what I'm looking for. But I actually figured that record's so rare, I'm never finding it. So I posted it up. And about 2 minutes later, Steve, who's into beach music, goes, I played sax on that record.
Wow.
I freaked out. I immediately removed the whole thing from Facebook. Contacted him privately and went, oh my God, you know, it's one of my favorite records. And he said, you can have my copy.
Wow.
And I said, no, look, this record is really, really rare. It's super expensive. If it's your only copy, you should keep it, you know.
Yes.
So he said, well, the Tony Nardi, the band leader, he's got some copies. I'll give you his contact details. So I emailed him and he's like, yeah, I've got copies. But where are you? And I said, no, he said, but I won't post overseas because I posted one to a collector in Europe and they never paid me.
Oh, wow.
And I went, oh, that's terrible. And I said, oh, that's so sad. I love this record. And I said, you know, and I'm in Melbourne, Australia. And he said, oh my God, we are coming to Melbourne, Australia in 6 weeks' time.
Wow.
I will bring it to you. And I said, oh, okay. I said, look, it's a very expensive record, and I gave him the only pop psych listing to it. And I said, but I can't afford that. You know, that's more than I make in a month.
Yes.
And he always made me promise I wouldn't tell how much. But he said, okay, for being honest, you can have it for X number.
Yes.
Big discount. And so he and his wife, Carla, and Eddie Mobley, who sang on the record, came to Melbourne, came to PBS, and gave me the record.
Oh, my gosh.
And I did an interview. And it's really funny because I was so excited about having the record in front of me. I did the worst interview I've ever done in my life because I just wanted to get it on the turntable. So it was amazing. And, we went out for lunch, and then the reason he was in Melbourne was to do a masterclass in Hammond B3, which is what Tony Nardi was there, and he was doing a masterclass on the use of the bass foot pedals.
Oh, wow.
So I then got to go out to the sticks, to the outer suburbs, and see Tony Nardi and Eddie Mobley perform.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
For this masterclass. And, they came to my gigs and I played the record and, they were absolutely lovely. And as it transpires, I won't name and shame, but I knew the collector. So what I did was I set up an email exchange with all three of us in, and then basically said to him, I either release all of this to Facebook or you pay these guys their money.
Good.
And he paid. And, and
that's awesome.
We still exchange Christmas cards to this day, Tony and I. And, Tony was amazing. He gave me all of his other records from when he was in the Czechs. And, the Garage one is really rare. Wow. And he gave me one from 1984. I think I've only played it a couple of times and I've not said who it is because I've never, ever seen another copy, and it's a ballad.
Wow.
Female vocal ballad.
I'd love to hear
that I'm
that.
keeping under my chest. Sort of. I'm going to play it on my radio show this week. Okay, I'm going to do it. But I'm not going to say who it is.
In for that.
But listen, it's fantastic, and it's completely unknown. I played a segment of it to Mike. I don't know how you pronounce his name. I want to say Umboltz.
Oh yeah, Umholtz. Yes.
Yeah, I played him a really small amount, and he was like, "Damn, what's that?" And I'm like,
Oh my
"Damn,
gosh.
not telling."
That's another guy right there that has he's got an ear on him, and his collection is really nice. He comes across a lot of nice stuff.
And
Big
look,
shout out to what was that?
He was feeding the UK guys back in the day.
Wow.
You know, that's where they were getting these rare crossover sides. You know, same with Mike Vey and Lou Stanley. I don't know if you know.
I don't know Lou Stanley, no.
Back in the day, you would get a hand-typed record list in the mail, and you'd ring him up, and he would play you stuff over the phone. Lou Stanley is how I got my copy of Bernard Drake, I've Been Untrue.
Wow.
You know, we were talking, and he was like, I think you'll like this record. I've got 2 of them. Do you want one? Sadly, I just sold that record this year. I rarely sell records.
Oh no.
Well, no, the thing is I'd had it for so long, and I was starting to wear it out.
Got you.
And I stopped playing it. It was so rare and so expensive, I didn't want to take it out. And I thought, what's the point of having it?
Yeah.
I regret it.
Let someone else enjoy it.
Yeah, but you know, I got an obscene amount of money for it, and then they reissued it. So if I ever want to listen to it, you
just caught the boat on that one. Yeah. Samantha, so what? I know you have a lot. I know you have a lot of tunes. You know, out here in the States, we love the lowrider music. We love the soul, the sweet soul. You know, deep soul also takes a big play in some of the sweet soul genres that we enjoy out here. If you had to pick 3 records from your collection that you can't leave behind, you have to keep those with you, which records would they be in the sweet soul, deep soul category?
Anne Sexton or Mary Sexton, I confess.
Yes.
That without a doubt. I wish you'd asked me this earlier, because I always go blank.
It's tough. You have so many good ones. I mean, you have the Trail label, you have all those motos. I mean, you have the Four Andante is such a great.
Well, definitely, Bob and Jean, I Could Be Cool.
Oh gosh.
How a 14-year-old can write the lyrics, if truth and trust and love that lasts has to become a thing of the past, I can be cool. I mean, I wasn't that sophisticated at 14. How? You know, that is just mind-blowing. Right? So it would definitely be those cool. 2, and the Diamondettes, Don't Be Surprised, or Lynn Williams. Okay. That is it's dark.
Some that resonate well with you.
Yeah, I love dark. You know, the thing is, if you're not personally brokenhearted, it sounds amazing.
Yes.
I mean, if it means something, then no. Or can I say, shout out to the modern records. Charles Bradley's Victim of Love. Oh my God.
Love Charles Bradley. Such a big loss, man. That was I still cry if I play Sharon Jones stuff.
I toured a lot with those guys. I toured Australia. You know, if they needed a DJ beforehand, I played. And in fact, I've got a beautiful story from the last time that Sharon Jones was in Australia. On the Thursday night before their show, you know, we met up and we all went out to Cherry Bar, got too drunk, way too drunk. And, you know, the next day, Gabe Roth was like, come on, Goldie, you said we were going to go for lunch. And I was really nursing a bad hangover.
Oh, no.
So I meet up with Gabe and Kim, who was doing the photography, and she lived in New York and in Sydney. And the three of us, we went out to lunch, had really nice Italian. And then Gabe and I went to the local record store, Northside Records, and to go say hi to Chris. And on the wall is a copy of Roosevelt Matthews, Got Me Digging on You, on King Records.
Oh, wow, I'm not
it's
familiar.
It's a crossover. Poof. And I was like, oh my God. He had it up for the wrong side, but I knew. And I was like, I'll take that, thanks, Chris. So I got this great record. And then we're sitting, having a coffee, and I was like, back at the hotel, Gabe's fussing around, and I said, Gabe, you have never ever done my favorite Sharon Jones song live. You know, in the 8 years that you've been coming out here and I've been playing for you. And he said, what's that? And I was like, it's Make It Good to Me, the ballad from the first LP. So I get to the show and I go backstage, and there's the horn section. Because Neil and Dave didn't come out to the last tour. So there was different horn people. So they are listening to a recording of Make It Good to Me, learning the horns.
Wow.
And it was crazy. They played at a beautiful old theatre, and they had a cocktail bar on the side of the stage with a guy making cocktails for them. And I was DJing with Joey and Fernando afterwards. So I had my box of records, and Gabe actually took it on stage and used it as his drink stand, because he was like, you don't want to leave your 45s in the back, you know, backstage. I'll bring them on stage. So he does that. He's got his cocktail on it. And it comes time for them to do Make It Good to Me, and Sharon doesn't want to do it because she loves the up-tempo songs. So Gabe's like, Sharon, I'm watching this from, you know, the back of the room, so that you can see the two of them having this conversation, and he's going, Sharon, it's for Samantha. You got to do it. It's for Samantha.
Oh,
and she's going, who? And he's like, Goldie. And she was like, oh, Goldie. Okay, Goldie, this one's for you. And they did Make It Good for Me. And I just cried all the way through it. It was so beautiful. And just, what was so sad is I think then the cancer had come back.
Yeah.
But she wasn't sick, and they weren't telling anybody they were doing this last tour. And it was a really beautiful gesture, because he knew that I was never seeing Sharon Jones again. Yeah. So this was sort of the one time. And it was just, you know, and I still find it hard to listen,
I agree.
To their music. It's funny, I will play the early Desco 45s, the funk ones, out at funk gigs, but I'm still not quite
ready.
Yeah.
Not ready yet.
What do you do?
Yeah, that's...
Same with Charles. They just... I'll play them on radio and it just makes me cry, you know? It's
it's amazing how these artists capture our soul from just certain songs that they've made.
Oh.
It's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough, you know.
Getting to hear Irma Thomas do Ruler of My Heart when she
I don't
came
think I've
here.
heard that one before.
Oh, yes, you
Irma,
have.
Irma Thomas?
Yeah. Ruler of My Heart.
Okay.
I haven't been tattooed for 25 years, but I want one tattoo. And that is the opening lines of that song and a 45 center on me. Because it opens with ruler of my heart, driver of my soul. And that just pretty much sums me up. It was a hit. Ruler of,
wow.
please
Sure
take a listen to it.
I'm sure if I hear it, I'm going to say,
You will know
that
it. You
song.
go, oh, that. It's not rare. It's a common record. But when she came out here, she brought a playbook and just said, I hear you guys like the older stuff. If you want to hear anything, shout it out. So I was front, just shouting out songs.
Good.
So she just did all of them that I wanted
so
to hear, you know.
So cool.
And I just stood there and, with a smile, crying. I'm terrible. I you know.
Wow.
I think it's great. It's refreshing. It's rejuvenating to let those emotions out. You know, even as a man, I'm not one of those guys who feel that I can't cry. You know, I've cried in public plenty of times from listening to certain songs. It's just, you know, I like to be true to myself and my emotions. And I think that music does that to all of us, whether it's
So
behind
much.
closed doors or out in public. You know, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. I love listening to your story, Samantha. I keep telling myself, like, I want to know more about you, but I love the stories that you're telling me. It's like, no, I just want you to run with what what you're running with. You know,
I'm pretty boring, really.
no, I want to know. Okay, so this is something we talked about just before we did the interview, and I'm curious to know, you've created a job for yourself. So if you can tell me how, like, what it is that you do, and how did that come about?
I'm the musical curator for a restaurant group. And there's this sort of, we're one of the biggest sort of really hip, I suppose for want of a better words, restaurant groups in Australia. And I got a job about 7 or 8 years ago just DJing for them on a Sunday. And I'd go in every week. And they, at that stage, were a small restaurant group. And they asked me if I knew any other DJs, would I like to book the other DJs? So I got a job as a booker. And then they said, we need playlists for our new Italian restaurant. Is that something you could do?
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I could do that. May I say, with a lot of help from my partner, Dave Boots, because I'm a technophobe. And he had to, you know, with a lot of patience, teach me how to use sort of certain bits of software. So it was this job that was quite organic. I just, as the restaurant group got bigger and bigger and bigger, and more restaurants needed playlists,
Wow.
it eventually turned into a full-time job. And as I said to you about my Bernard Drake record, it did occur to me, you know, I've got some records. My copy of Enel Young, What Do You See in Her, if you know that record, beautiful record. I bought it pristine mint in 1995. Wow. It is now hissy, you know.
Oh, wow.
My copy of Hercules. And I realized I needed to get another job so that I was only DJing, you know, radio once a week and maybe once or twice a week. So I invented this job with this company, and I it means doing some stuff that I don't like. At the moment, I'm programming house music and disco re-edits. Now, I hate house music. So it's really interesting trying to find, the soul in it.
Yes.
But then we've got another restaurant that I'm doing, and that is just neo soul, stuff like
Oh, good.
neo soul, and I'm adding in there sweet soul and mid-tempo 70s soul. So the good thing is I get to, with some, I get to do jazz and down tempo and funk. But then others, our flagship restaurant is cheesy 80s music. And it took me ages to get that one right. They kept saying to me, Goldie, cheesier. If you think it's too cheesy, you put it on. Whereas my natural state is like, I was wanting to give them obscure 80s.
Yes.
And they're like, no.
They want it as corny as possible.
That awful stuff that you feel sick listening to. So,
That's
because
funny.
general population love it,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just decided I didn't want to DJ, 4 or 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
And
I think that's amazing.
destroy
that
my records.
Yeah. I mean, that's funny. To have a record in pristine condition and play it so much to where you can actually hear this.
Yep.
It's a lot of plays.
It's sad.
A lot of plays.
Well, and also, styrene.
Yeah.
You've got to spit every time you say that word. How
That's so
many
funny.
great sweet soul records are on styrene?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll get a record. I remember when I got Theron and Daryl, and I pulled it out. I was made to love her. I think I put it on the mix. Killer sweet soul, but it's styrene. So I'm like, okay, you can't play that as much as you want. You can't play it.
Be careful.
Because I'll get a new song, and when I'm getting my radio show together, flicking through shelves, I can listen to the same song 10 times. I'll be like, oh no, got to hear that again.
So how do you clean your records with all that being said, as far as the damaging of the records? Is there a secret or a way you do it personally?
Toothbrush and warm soapy water with the grooves.
Okay.
And then wipe with a soft cloth. So that's how I'll get the dust and dirt out.
Yeah.
The deep
And
grit.
my partner has a ritual every week. He gets out needles, DJ needles, and gets alcohol, metho, and just brushes down the diamond,
Good.
the tip.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that, have you ever seen a picture of a stylie in a record up close?
Yes.
Google it.
Yes.
The beautiful plumes of vinyl it scrapes away. Because let's face it, plastic can't destroy diamond. It just coats it. So we try to sort of keep our needles clean. And
She makes me want to go clean my needles right now.
yeah.
Wow. You're right.
Yeah.
There's so much so many technical aspects to vinyl care and needles. I mean, as you said, there's different types of needles, and not many people realize this. You got the conical, the spherical, so it's like different needles are made for different things, and I didn't know all this when I started, when I started buying records. I had got my first set of turntables at the age of 13. I did not care about what type of needle I was using, and it wasn't until maybe my mid 20s where I realized, like, I'm doing this all wrong. All those dials on the turntable are for a reason. You got to adjust the arm so that it's level and all this stuff. There's just so much behind it, and for people like us who, I don't collect as crazy expensive records that you have, simply because I refuse to pay the prices of today. If it comes my way and I find it and the price is correct, I'll jump on it. But for someone as yourself, I mean, you have to know, you have to be aware of all that, and be as high maintenance as possible with
You do,
with your
because
equipment.
one of the things that I hate is when people fetishize the object of 45s and then don't play them. It's like these. It's
Yes.
got music on it. You play them, so you want to try to keep them in as good condition. And I've got to say as well, I've played four figures a handful of times for records. You know, things like The Saints.
Wow,
That record
yes.
was, you know, there's no finding that cheap. And
Wigwam, is that the Wigwam
Yeah.
label or something like that?
you know,
Such a
but
beautiful.
the beautiful thing is people like Jason Perlmutter. You know, I bought off him long before he had the eBay juggernaut that is Carolina Soul. And these guys knew that again and again this has happened. When they know they've got rare records, they want them to go to the right people. So they would rather sell it to me and have me pay it off over 6 months
Yes.
than just some big wallet who walks in and goes, I can afford
take it.
everything. So, you know, I've been really lucky like that. Or finding
blessing.
Australian stuff like Mike Vey. He wanted the San Francisco TKO
Yes.
45 that was pressed in New Zealand. And I had a bunch of those.
Oh wow.
So, you know, but the thing is now I don't understand how collectors do it. You know, I really don't want to pay any more than my cutoff these days is around £250. There's nothing. I'm just like meh. All of this
well,
dropping
you have
1,500 US every time you want to buy a record. Who the f has that money? I just got a regular job. I don't own my own home. You know, I live in a rental with my cats and my partner.
Oh my God.
You know, I want to be
Goldie,
able to
you-
afford my 50s furnishings because
I like that lamp back there. I was looking at that, and I was trying to see the picture back there.
It's a Tretyakov green lady. It's the
Okay.
the sort of gold standard of 50s kitsch prints. It's actually was the most reproduced print in the world. And
Oh,
the
wow.
lamp is a Barsony Moss lamp, which were the 50s kitsch black lady lamps. I
dig it.
I can talk to you about sort of mid-century pottery and painters and stuff as well.
I'm so glad you took time to be with us, Samantha. I really wish we had more time. You know, it always happens like this when we interview someone. It takes a second to get the ball rolling. You know, we want to know, and then we start getting into these topics and conversations, and then the good juicy stuff. By the time we get to the last 15 minutes of the interview, it's like all the good juicy stuff starts coming out. You know, and I mean, we have probably 3 minutes left here, and I want to have so much more with you. I think that your stories are interesting. I mean, you're a wonderful, wonderful person. You know, I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity to do this with you.
Thank you.
Just so much to learn about someone in so little time. But I'm glad that we do this. I mean, the whole purpose of Bridge City Radio, it was a blessing that was given to us. A friend of mine, big shout out to King Steady Beat. He called and asked if I wanted to do a 1 hour show. So I was thinking it's a 1 hour segment on his show. turns out to be a
Your
1 hour
own.
segment of your own. So I figured Frank is the guy for me. Frank and I have been working on music for over 20 years together and off and on, and I just thought he would be the perfect person to go into this with. And we both decided that we want to reach out to people that love music just like us.
Right.
And at first we unfortunately at this moment we can't be in studio due to circumstances of the world which are out of our control, but we don't want to hinder the program because we can't do them in person. By the blessings that showered upon us, we figured, why not start up
Go
a
global.
separate segment called Bridge City Radio Worldwide, where we get to reach out to you, and we get to reach out to Dave and Flanny. We get to reach out to people in the States,
Right.
people across the globe. And I think it's wonderful. I'm so glad that you were willing to do this with us. I really am.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's a real honor, because I just think of myself as I'm just another one of many, many collectors.
Yes.
So, and we all have record envy. As
Yes.
far as I'm concerned, there's always somebody that in your mind has better records. So
Yes,
it's just one of those
And I hope
things.
that it stays that way. I hope.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to get to the point where I think I know it all, or I feel like I have the best collection. I want to stay as malleable as possible. I want to be able to learn every day about
Look,
this.
If I know 20% of what was put out in America in the late 60s and early 70s, I think I'm doing good. The amount of music is staggering. And that's the thing. It's just now, to find good records, you have to really hunt.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
But, it's
Thank you so much. Thank
my
you so much,
pleasure, my
Samantha.
absolute pleasure.
Is there anything you want to say before we let you go? Do you want to give any shout outs or anything you want to talk about before we let you go or say?
I would like to say that if you want to hear any more of the stuff I've got, you just go on to Boss Action page on pbsfm.org.au, and all of the shows are archived, so you get to have a listen. Shout out to Solera 5150, Ruben
Yes.
Molina. They're the two people that I first came across. Ruben got me to contribute to one of his books about Sweet Soul. Amazing. I really want to come to America, and I really want to come and play the lowrider scene. We have nothing like that here. It's just me and 5 other mates that
Bring all
slow
5 of them
records.
down. You will blow some minds out here. People will wonder, who is this lady? For those that don't know who you are, a lot of people know who you are out here, Samantha. I mean, a lot of the heavy hitters out here know who you are, and I'm sure I hope people get to see this program and get to listen to your mix. And I hope, I'm all about learning. I want to learn, and I want people to enjoy what we bring. And thank you for giving us your time and
Yes,
being here
definitely.
with us.
Thank you both very much. It's an honor.
Before we let you go, again, what is the social contact where we can reach you?
It's www.pbsfm.org.au is the radio station. My Instagram is Miss Goldie 45 RPM. Samantha Goldie on Facebook. But tune in to some of the shows or listen back.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Frank, you got anything you want to say before we let her go?
I just thank you for your time, Miss Goldie. We appreciate you, and looking forward to hearing your more of your mixes. I know the mix that you sent, the quality was like really done well, so we appreciate that.
Shout outs to CC Disco, who is a PBS she was a PBS presenter. She's now a serious big deal in Europe on the disco scene. And she actually did the production for me. I just went in studio and did my bit, and she recorded the instrumental sides of my records and embedded it and produced the show. So shout out, girl, because I couldn't have done that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, it was Cece, you said?
Cece Disco.
Oh, so awesome. I have to look her up as well. Once again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Bridge City Radio. Sorry that we have to let you guys go. We're only allowed an hour on the show, and we've exceeded that by a few minutes, but that's okay. You've been tuned in to Samantha Goldie, Miss Goldie, excuse me. I call her Samantha Goldie, the queen, in my opinion. One of them, you know, she has heavy records. Give her a follow on Instagram. Want to thank you guys for tuning in, and I hope you and your family have a wonderful evening.